Ever get the urge to, like, peek behind the curtain? See how the sausage gets made?
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of sausage are we talking about today?
Well, today's deep dive is a little different. We're diving into your notes for a potential podcast.
Oh, my notes. And what have you uncovered in these notes of mine?
The title caught my eye: Overcoming Doubt and Fear. Powerful stuff.
hmm
And it got me thinking, even the title, it kind of reveals something, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Even at the blueprint stage, the language we use, the themes we gravitate towards, those choices speak volumes.
Right, like overcoming, it suggests this desire for agency, for tools to navigate uncertainty, and that resonates, wouldn't you say?
It taps into something very human, don't you think? That
Yeah.
desire to not just endure difficult emotions, but to actually transcend them, to
Hey,
find a way out, so to speak.
exactly. And it made me wonder, who exactly is this podcast for? The themes themselves, doubt, fear, yearning for strength, those are pretty universal.
100%. We all grapple with those, regardless of background or belief system. But the outline itself might offer some clues, right?
Oh, for sure. Like you mentioned pastors, theologians, biblical perspectives. It's not explicitly religious, but
Yeah.
there's a certain cultural context there.
Absolutely. It suggests a specific audience might feel right at home, while others might feel like they're getting a glimpse into a world they're not entirely familiar with.
Like eavesdropping on a conversation already in progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that in itself can be fascinating, right?
Oh,
It highlights the diversity of human experience, even within a seemingly niche topic.
totally. But even with that specific lens, the core themes, that desire for connection, for something to cling to in moments of doubt, those are universal, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It speaks to a fundamental truth about being human.
Mm.
We all crave a sense of belonging and the tools to navigate life's inevitable curveballs.
It's like even in planning a podcast about these individual struggles, your outline itself becomes a testament to the power of shared experience. Did you do that on purpose?
Well, whether conscious or not, our creative endeavors often reveal those underlying needs and desires.
When I was going through your notes, the sheer volume of episodes dedicated to personal stories, journeys, testimonies, it was striking.
And there's a reason for that. Stories, especially those of struggle and triumph, they tap into something deeply primal within us.
It's like that age-old campfire scenario, right? Sharing tales of bravery and resilience, it's how we process fear, find strength, and remind ourselves that we're not alone.
Precisely. And this human need for connection, for shared experience, it's further emphasized by the emphasis on practical application. It's not just about feeling heard, it's about arming yourself with concrete tools to navigate doubt and fear.
Okay, so it's not enough to just sit with those feelings. We're looking for actionable steps, for ways to transform that uncertainty into something empowering.
Exactly. And this desire for tangible solutions, for strategies and practices, it suggests an audience that isn't passive. They're active seekers, hungry for guidance that goes beyond abstract concepts.
And this brings us to another fascinating theme woven throughout your outline: community. Support groups, shared experiences, even just listening to a podcast. It all points to this idea that we're not meant to go through these struggles alone.
And you're right to highlight this, because it speaks to a fundamental human need that often gets overlooked. We are, by nature, social creatures. And when grappling with uncertainty, feeling supported, heard, understood, can be incredibly powerful.
It's like even in mapping out a podcast about overcoming personal struggles, your outline itself becomes a testament to the power of community.
Exactly. And that, my friend, is where things start to get really interesting, because it reveals something crucial about the human experience. Even when we think we're alone, even in the very act of seeking individual solace, there's this unspoken yearning for connection that binds us together.
And that's where this deep dive takes an unexpected turn. Because by analyzing your podcast outline, we're not just uncovering the building blocks of a potential show, we're holding up a mirror to our own deeply human need for connection, for meaning making, for those shared narratives that remind us, even in the darkest of times, we are not alone.
And perhaps it's embracing that interconnectedness, in recognizing the universality of doubt and fear, that we can begin to cultivate a sense of belonging and find the strength to navigate those inevitable moments of uncertainty.
Now, while those overarching themes are incredibly insightful, there were a few specific episodes in your outline that I found particularly intriguing.
Oh, do tell.
Okay, so episode 4, Questioning Faith. Navigating doubt and skepticism. Even the title, it just hits different, Ray.
How so? What do you hear in that?
It's like not crushing doubt, but navigating it. Like doubt is just this terrain you're traveling. What do you make of that?
It's subtle, but incredibly significant, I think. It hints at a shift away from that, historical view of doubt as the enemy, like something to be conquered. Instead, there's this acknowledgement that doubt is just a natural part of the terrain, something to be navigated.
Okay, so less of a battle, more of a journey. I like that. But why is that so important, especially in the context of faith?
Because, you see, wrestling with those doubts, it can actually lead to a more resilient, more authentic faith in the end.
Really? So it's like if your faith can survive a little shaking, the foundation must be pretty solid.
Exactly. Blind faith, that can be fragile. But a faith that's been tested, challenged, refined through introspection, that's a faith that can weather storms.
Which makes me think of another episode title that kind of stopped me in my tracks. Episode 8, you mentioned the dark night of the soul. Okay, that sounds intense. What exactly does that even mean?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And while it's often used in spiritual contexts, it speaks to a universal human experience, I think. We all go through those periods of profound questioning, those moments when we feel unmoored, lost in a sea of uncertainty. It's that existential searching, grappling with those big questions of meaning and purpose.
So, not necessarily tied to a crisis of faith specifically, but more like an existential crisis. Full stop. We've all been there.
Precisely. It's that feeling of being adrift, stripped bare, unsure of which way is up. And what's interesting is that this podcast, it dedicates an entire episode to this concept. What does that tell us about your potential listeners?
That they're probably in the thick of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grappling with those big, messy questions. And maybe, just maybe, they're looking for a lifeline, a sense that they're not alone.
Exactly. It suggests that even within a community centered around faith, there's this acknowledgement of the very real struggles a lot of people face. And that acknowledgement, that validation, it's often the first step towards finding meaning, finding solace in the midst of all that uncertainty.
It's incredible how much we're uncovering just from these episode titles. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but instead of a picture, we're revealing this whole psychological landscape.
And that, my friend, is the beauty of these kinds of deep dives. We're not just analyzing a podcast outline, we're tapping into that very human need to make sense of doubt, of fear, of the search for meaning. It's about recognizing that these experiences, as individual as they may feel, they actually connect us to something much larger than ourselves.
So if we take a step back, what does this outline with its focus on personal stories, practical strategies, community support, what does it tell us about the cultural moment we're in?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And while there's no single answer, the very fact that this podcast, it resonated with you, that it sparked your curiosity enough to create this detailed outline, that speaks volumes. It suggests a yearning for guidance, for tools to navigate these complexities of faith and doubt in a world that often feels, maybe increasingly uncertain.
It's like we're all craving a roadmap, a sense of direction when the world feels like it's spinning a little too fast.
Exactly. And within that craving, there's this recognition that we don't have to go it alone. There's strength in those shared stories, in the collective wisdom of those who've navigated similar terrain. And that's incredibly powerful.
It's interesting because when I first jotted down that title, Overcoming Doubt and Fear, a part of me wondered, is that even possible to really overcome those things? Or is it more about learning to live with them, finding ways to navigate them?
You're hitting on a crucial point there. And honestly, that's the question, isn't it? Your outline, even without a single episode recorded, it's already sparked such a profound line of inquiry. It challenges us to consider what it really means to overcome something as intrinsic to the human experience as doubt and fear.
Right. Is it about eradication or transformation? About silencing those inner voices or learning to listen to them, to find the wisdom they might hold?
Precisely. And perhaps the true journey lies not in seeking definitive answers, but in embracing the questions themselves, allowing ourselves to sit with the discomfort of uncertainty, to find meaning in the messiness of it all.
It's funny, right? We started with this podcast outline, and now we're spiraling into these big existential questions.
But isn't that fascinating? How exploring something as seemingly simple as a podcast idea can lead us down these rabbit holes of human experience.
Totally. It's like we stumbled onto this treasure map, but instead of gold, we found, a deeper understanding of ourselves.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about finding the right answers, but about daring to ask the questions in the first place, to get curious about our own internal landscapes.
It's like we've been excavating not just a podcast idea, but a whole world of anxieties, hopes, that very human need to make sense of it all.
Precisely. And if we connect this back to you, the listener, it begs the question, what would your podcast outline reveal? What are the doubts and fears you're grappling with? What kind of guidance are you seeking? What kind of community are you hungry for?
It's like holding up a mirror, right? This outline with its focus on doubt, fear, that search for meaning. It's something we can all relate to no matter what our background is, what we believe.
And perhaps that's the most important takeaway of all, that by acknowledging these shared struggles, by creating space for doubt, for uncertainty, we open ourselves up to a much deeper, more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Instead of trying to fix those feelings, it's like we're learning to, I don't know, listen to them, find the wisdom they might hold.
Exactly, because often it's in the wrestling and the questioning that we stumble upon our most profound insights. It's in those moments of uncertainty that we're forced to confront our assumptions, to really reevaluate our beliefs, and ultimately forge a path forward that feels authentic to us.
So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought to chew on. If this podcast outline were a mirror reflecting your own inner world, what would it show? What are those questions you're grappling with, the doubts you maybe haven't even voiced out loud yet? What are you afraid of?
Because maybe, just maybe, by shining a light on those shadowy corners, by giving a voice to those anxieties, we can begin to transform them into sources of growth, of resilience, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's been quite the journey today, hasn't it? Just goes to show you never know what digging into a simple podcast outline might unearth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. And remember, the exploration doesn't end here. Take these questions, these reflections, and let them guide you on your own journey.